Good. Okay, welcome back from the break, everyone. Another fantastic session is about to kick off. I'm going to hand over to start the session to Daniel. He's got the fourth and final announcement of Flower Summit, and then we'll kick off into a series of invited talks as we were doing before. So over to Daniel.
Thank you very much. So in addition to the research updates we gave yesterday and the industry updates today, we want to give a quick update on Flower integration with other tooling. And I think I set the context earlier, but really let me repeat it. Our goal with Flower is to enable everyone, no matter whether they are researchers or whether they are engineers in industry, to use all the tools they know and love in a as seamless as possible way together with Flower. And we have a few updates that really didn't fit both of the other talks or would have gone on for way too long. So we bundled them all up into one big Flower Ops update, well, short update. So maybe let me just quickly repeat. In terms of machine learning framework support, I think we are already best in class. We have support for all the major frameworks. We recently added a few highly requested ones like XGBoost with a very custom aggregation strategy. And we are only expanding that to other frameworks. For example, things like TensorFlow Privacy and Opacus for differential privacy. That are very complementary to the built-in approaches that we have. JAX is gaining popularity and we've supported it for a while. And as I mentioned earlier, now we also have pandas for federated analytics support. In terms of edge client support, so we had the Python SDK has been stable for quite a while now. It's the major way to get started with Flower, and in the server environment and cross-silo environment, it's the go-to way to build Flower clients. But in other environments, we recently added more support for more edge environments. For example, Swift for all Apple environments, C++, we've had it for a while as a preview SDK. Our Android example has gotten quite a few updates over the last couple of months. And then we have community-supported SDKs for Node.js and for Flutter. Probably quite obvious, but the next step is to really mature those other edge environments like the Swift SDK and the Android SDK. For Android, we will, I mentioned this earlier also, we will use the example that we have and then pull out those components that make up the SDK, publish the SDK separately, so that someone who wants to build an Android app that uses federated learning can just add this as a dependency to their project and then bring their own model and train their own model on Android devices. On Swift, that's already possible. We have the SDK in a very early preview release, but for both of these mobile platforms and also for C++ support, the next step is to mature these SDKs and bring them and achieve feature parity with the Python SDK, feature parity and stability. Next, we want to announce an official weights and biases integration that we're going to release later this year. And I'm not going to go much further into this because we have a dedicated weights and biases talk right after my session. A few of the other updates that are especially interesting for permanent deployments in industry settings are we're going to support Postgres to store the state of the Flower server so that the Flower server can be started and stopped without losing state. It's also an important component for the high availability server that's coming. We already have support for other databases and for in-memory state, but Postgres is going to be the next thing that we are adding there. Then also requested many times from the community is official Docker images. Now that we have this self-contained server that can run independent of a particular workload, we will publish official Docker images that someone can just depend on. So that our users don't have to build their own Docker containers anymore. and that in typical cloud environments, it becomes easier to just start and run a Flower server. Related to that, or Docker is sort of the prerequisite for that, is Kubernetes support. We want to provide basically built-in recipes that users can use to deploy a Flower system on Kubernetes, whether that's in a cross-silo case or then in a cross-device case, just a server environment with all the necessary tooling where the clients continue to run on edge devices. And then to make that easier in common environments, not just give you the raw Kubernetes and Docker ingredients, to make that easier in common environments, common cloud environments, we will also publish official deployment recipes for the most common cloud environments. And that's initially that's going to be AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform, GCP. But also then related to that, a deployment guide for how to do this on premises, because that's very important for some of our users. And the on-premises deployment guide will also be a good blueprint for how to do this in other cloud environments where we might not have official documentation about it yet. To wrap things up, a quick reminder about the Flower Next pilot program. If you're starting to deploy Flower in production and you think it would be valuable for you to get some hands-on time with the core Flower maintainers, please consider applying for the Flower Next pilot program. And if there's something where you're saying, well, I want to do X for Flower, but it's difficult to do it right now, and I don't really know how to do it, the Flower Next pilot program is really meant as a two-way communication channel, where on the one hand you get hands-on time with the maintainers, but then we get valuable feedback to see where users are still struggling with the framework, and then we can incorporate these learnings into our roadmap, or ideally immediately provide a fix, release that, and make it available to the wider Flower community. And that wraps up my Flower Ops update.
Thanks, Daniel. We've got time for a couple of questions while Ryan comes down.